You're listening to Ghostumentary Scary Short Stories, original pieces updated throughout the week.
The aliens found me. James sat motionless in the corner of the dark shed, his ears ringing, mind swirling in fear. The relentless war had pushed him into this desolate forest shed 3 years ago, deep in the hills of central Idaho. It had been his refuge, a rotting wooden box with no running water, no electricity, just the cold comfort of isolation. The world had gone mad when the 44 alien crafts descended from the sky, trying to enslave the human race. Less than 10% of humanity still fought. The rest, whether dead or captured, were ghosts, gone without a trace. James knew he was one of the lucky few, though hiding in constant fear didn't feel much like luck. Today he was experiencing something new. A loud, deafening sound filling the air. Loud and terrifying, was unlike anything he had ever heard. He'd been accustomed to silence, the eerie kind that presses on your eardrums in the middle of the wilderness. But this sound was something new, something deadly. It came from the south, where the old ski resort lay abandoned, a crumbling relic of better times. The hum was so powerful, it vibrated through his body, making his bones ache and his ears bleed. He wiped at the wetness, but dared not look at the blood that coated his fingers. He couldn't stay. He knew that now. His shed was no longer a refuge, but a death trap. With shaking hands, James reached for the rifles. He hadn't used them in years, relying instead on his bow for silent kills when hunting rabbits or wild game. But this wasn't a hunt for food. This was survival against creatures that had decimated humanity. Creatures that didn't bleed or fall easily. He shoved 2 pistols into the pockets of his cargo pants, strapped one rifle to his back, and kept the others close, dragging them across the floor as he crept toward the door. The outside world was unnaturally quiet. No birds, no rustling leaves. It was as if the entire forest was holding its breath, waiting for what was to come. He strained his ears to listen beyond the throbbing pain. The loud sound was replaced by a hum, and the hum was growing louder. But more terrifying than that, he could hear trees crashing. Something was coming, something massive, tearing through the woods like they were nothing more than toothpicks. James hesitated. Should he stay and fight, or run? The decision was ripped from him as the sound of splintering wood reached a fever pitch. The shed felt claustrophobic now, and he knew if he stayed, whatever was coming would crush him like an insect. He grabbed his pack, stuffing in food, useless keepsakes like his snow globe from Sun Valley, a harmonica he never played, and bolted through the door. The sunlight outside was blinding. After 3 years of near-constant darkness, the brightness stung his eyes. He blinked through the haze, glancing down at the blood trickling from his ears. The hum! It wasn't just sound. It was a weapon. He began to run, heading north, away from the ski resort, away from the impending doom. His boots pounded against the earth as he ascended the rough terrain, the hum still chasing him, growing louder with every step. He had never ventured this far before, and the landscape quickly became unfamiliar, untamed. The ground was rocky, the incline steep, but he kept pushing, every breath labored, every heartbeat a drum of fear. And yet, the hum kept pace. The sound seemed to seep into his very soul, filling him with dread. He reached a smooth, wet boulder near the summit of the mountain, thinking if he could just get over it, he might escape. But his hand slipped on the slick surface, and he fell hard, the impact jarring his bones. Pain shot through his leg, and he screamed before biting his lip to silence himself. His leg, he could feel the bone shifting beneath the skin. It was broken. Panic set in. He crawled to the side of the boulder, using a rifle to drag himself into a small hiding spot. The hum was louder now, so close he could hear the trees cracking apart just a few hundred yards away. He braced himself, the rifle clutched tightly in his shaking hands, and waited for the end. Then, silence. The hum stopped as suddenly as it had started. He squinted through the pain, his eyes scanning the forest. That's when he saw it. An alien. It moved with an eerie grace through the trees, tall and gangly, its skin leathery like an old football. Its small, dark eyes locked onto him, unblinking, emotionless. James had never seen one up close before. This was the enemy, the thing that had brought Earth to its knees. But as the alien approached, James noticed something. Purplish goo dripped from a wound on its side. It was hurt. A second alien appeared, limping, its leg oozing with the same sickly goo. A third followed, equally injured. James felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they were weak. Maybe this was his chance. He lifted his rifle, aiming it at the first alien. His finger hovered over the trigger, ready to fire. He could take one out, maybe even all three. But just as he steadied his breath, the sound returned, louder and more brutal than before. The pain was instantaneous, ripping through his skull. His hands flew to his ears, the rifle clattering to the ground. He screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the hum, vibrating through his teeth, his bones. His vision blurred, and when he opened his eyes again, everything was white. Not just bright, blindingly white. The trees, the ground, even his own hands had vanished into the void. He reached down blindly, finding the rifle by touch alone. He couldn't see the aliens, but he knew they were there. He fired blindly, each shot a desperate attempt to hit something. Anything. He emptied the rifle, grabbed another, and fired again, the sound of gunshots lost in the overwhelming hum. He screamed as he fired, his voice drowned out by the relentless noise. Then it stopped. The whiteness faded, the pain subsiding into a dull throb. The forest was still. Too still. James looked around, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The aliens, there they were, lying on the ground, motionless, dead. But something else was wrong. To his left, a gray shape caught his eye. It wasn't an alien. It was smaller, human. He crawled over, his legs screaming in pain with every movement. It was a woman, dressed in a military suit he didn't recognize. She was young, maybe 20, her face pale, eyes wide and unseeing. Dead. James stared at her, his mind struggling to comprehend what he had done. Then the sound of footsteps, human footsteps, rushed toward him. A group of soldiers, all dressed like the dead woman, appeared from the trees. They didn't look at him. They ran straight for her, their faces filled with horror. James knew then. The war was still going on. Humanity was still fighting. But they had found new weapons, new ways to kill the aliens. And in his terror, in his blind panic, he had killed one of them. 4 dead aliens, 1 dead human. But this time the aliens didn't kill anyone. James did.
Looking for more scary tales? Subscribe to our podcast and visit ghostumentary.com. Let us know what you think or share with us your scary tales. We might just make a new story from it.